He is one of the world's preeminent authorities on active longevity and compressed morbidity, the best-selling author of Live Long, Die Short, a former U.S. Air Force flight surgeon. He's the president of Masterpiece Living, and he is here tonight, in his own words, to help us all squeeze the mo. Let's welcome Dr. Roger Landry.
Thank you. Hey, Mark, I think growing bolder is already well entranced here in the villages, don't you think? I do. Well, thank you for being here. This is an honor. Did you know that the average life expectancy of a World War I fighter pilot in the European theater was about 11 days to several weeks? So they lived a life, as you might suspect, that was characterized by boldness and intensity and passion. And this was passed on from the next generation of fighter pilots into World War II, into Korea, into Vietnam. I was a flight surgeon with an F-4 squadron and an F-15 squadron, and I came to know these flyers very, very well. In fact, I flew missions with them, and it didn't take too many harrowing experiences and unfortunately the loss of comrades that had me adopting that same lifestyle, and I will be forever grateful for that. But what about all of us? How do we live our lives? Who wants to live to be 100? Well, you heard it's probably going to happen. You know, but what is that? Because usually when I ask that question, I get about half the people that want to do it. Why? You know, we are wired to survive. Why would we not jump at the chance to live longer and longer? Because we associate getting older with decline, with impairment, and with suffering. And who wants to sign up for that, right? No one. The question comes then is to how can we live a life that is characterized by these same characteristics that we saw in fighter pilots, this boldness and this intensity and this wanting to grab every moment. Well, why can't it be different? Why can't we live longer at high quality and high function, again, for longer and longer? Why can't we live the way Ashley Montague recommended we live? Die young as late as possible. Well, Jonas Salk, the famous Jonas Salk, asked that question over 30 years ago. And he launched the MacArthur 10-year-long study on aging. And that changed everything. Because that told us that how we age is determined mostly by lifestyle. Up to 70% of how we age is determined by our lifestyle. So we know that's the choices we make every day and the choices that we make at any age. I know, lifestyle, right? A lot of us haven't had a lot of success with that, have we? The reason for that is that we usually take on too much, and we'll be getting into that. When they found that lifestyle was the major determinant in how we age, we then were off to the races relative. So what do we do with that? How do we incorporate that into the mainstream, and how do we incorporate it into our lives? What do we do about that? Well, you know, after the MacArthur study told us that it was lifestyle, you know, some of us said, well, what does that mean, lifestyle? That must mean I have to run marathons, I have to learn Chinese, I have to eat only bark, or at least spit out anything that tastes good, right? Wrong. Because I know that you, every one of you, particularly here, can live a life where you can push off major illness and impairment until the end, closer to the end of your life. That is possible. That's called the compression of morbidity. Morbidity is when we're sick and impaired, and we want to compress that time. This is delaying the time when we're limited and where we're declining. And in doing that, we're actually squeezing the most out of life. That's what we're doing. Compression of morbidity, squeezing the most out of life. And it's building resilience in order to bounce back from life's inevitable curveballs, because they are indeed coming, aren't they? So, compression of morbidity, how do we develop that resilience? If resilience is going to have us bounce back, how do we develop that? Well, it's simple. It's lifestyle choices, and they're simple, ladies and gentlemen. And everyone in this room can do it. So what are they? Moving. Our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. They moved. We are creatures of movement. Everything works better when we move. Everything. And I'm just saying moving now. And unfortunately, in our society, we're becoming more and more sedentary. And in fact, sitting is the new smoking. That's a paper from the Mayo Clinic. He actually did the research. Learning new things. The new characteristic that we have discovered about the brain called neuroplasticity, this allows us to rewire our brain. And so we can rewire our brain when we need it, either from injury or when we want to learn new things. So we really are the architect of our own brain. And when we do that, we can resist what we used to think was the inevitable decline of our brain function. So we're the architects of our brain. We should build stuff if we're the architects, right? So we can build small things like eating with your opposite hand. Big things like a language or a craft of some sort. Or at least getting out of our comfort zone every now and then. Third one is to be connected and not neglected. That's the problem. Our ancestors, once again, banded together. That's how they survived. And that's why we're here today, because they did that. We are wired to be with others. I know. People are messy. They're annoying. They hurt us. But we're much, much better together. And we have to strive to overcome that. You want some tips on how to be at the belle of the ball in this world that is somewhat dog-eat-dog? Forgive. Okay? Have compassion, and give up the need to be right. That won't be easy, ladies and gentlemen, I know that, but I'm telling you, you will be better. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Find your purpose. Have passion in your life. You know, Mary Oliver said, "Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life." That's a question for all of us, I believe, every day. James Joyce said, "It's better to pass boldly into the other world in the full glory of some passion than to fade and wither with age." Be that person that you were meant to be at this stage in your life. I can give you a hint that probably means making life a little easier for other living things. Now, as you're making these changes, do them in small increments, okay? Because the big changes, the New Year's resolutions, they don't work. The small ones do work. Make it a small goal. Reach that, and that will lead to bigger goals later on. So small. If you want to move more, just take a few more steps a day, really, as a beginning. Small increments, they work. But have big expectations. You know, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute barrier for running a mile at a time when they felt it was impossible to do that, until it wasn't. You know, Henry Ford said, if you think you can do something or you think you cannot do something, you're probably right. So expectations matter, ladies and gentlemen. And remember to be there for all of this. Be aware. Be present. You know, if you chase after your chattering mind like so many of us do, that is only going to lead to stress, disappointment, and suffering. Find that thing that has you shut off your mind, whatever that is, even for seconds. Meditation, nature, friends, pets, whatever. Find that so you can reboot every day and that stress doesn't get out of hand. So, that's it. I mean, that's not so hard, is it? You can do that. You can live your life boldly, okay, with passion and with intensity, just like fighter pilots, except longer, a whole lot longer. Now, you're going to hear some compelling stories here tonight from some remarkable people. But remember, your life is yours, and yours alone. It's unique, and you're responsible for what it is. You're responsible for it to be all that it can be. And you can do that. You can do that. So when people tell you you're looking good, what are you doing? Saying, I'm compressing my morbidity. Or you can say, I'm squeezing the most out of my life. But here's my message. Feel the squeeze, okay? Feel that squeeze. Let's hear it. Feel that squeeze. Feel that squeeze. My job here is done. Thank you very much.